First, we have to establish that our CEOs and general managers human beings. And if we have established that fact that they are, then one has to recognize their reactions and responses to present difficulties are no different than would be for anybody else. Often when we hear the news through the corporate greed and what's going on and so forth, we just lump everybody together into one category of greed-driven folks and whatnot, and that really is not the case. I have seen many, many wonderful human beings serving in critical positions, doing a great job, and also struggling as you and I would in any ordinary circumstances.
You know, we mentioned that it's hard for them to sometimes leave all this at the door when they go home at night because they have families themselves. What are some of the things that are happening? What's some of the emotional turmoil they're going through?
There was a cartoon which I just remembered. The family is on a vacation. Everybody is dressed in bathing suit except father. And he is dressed up in a three-piece suit with a briefcase on, and the wife is laughing and making a statement, just because you go to work every day does not, and leave it as such. We have hard time letting go of our roles and transitioning to the other roles in our lives. So folks at times will take their things at home, and they're struggling and worrying and trying to strive to bring in that balance of life, and it can be done, but it is hard at times. And sometimes we see folks struggling with those roles and being able to strike that, when to let go of their work roles. Things of this nature, when you go home, you still are worrying about the layoffs, the situations around, feeling guilty about what to do, and just ruminating about, how to be effective in the face of the responsibility that they're enduring.
Well, I used to tell people there was never a day that I laid in bed not wanting to jump out of bed and go to work. I love what I do for a living. But I have to say, when you're in the midst of layoffs or when you're in the midst of not making a revenue budget month after month after month, there are those occasional days when you just want to pull the covers up and you really don't want to get out of bed, and you sit there and you process what you have to do that day. And I'm not intimidated by a whole lot. It's intimidating when you have to look an employee in the eye and say, I'm sorry, I have to let you go. Those are difficult conversations and painful, and those are the days you don't want to get out of bed. It sounds a little silly, and as I play this through my mind, I don't know how it will sound as it comes out, but I rehearse in my mind the conversations that I'm going to have. I feel as though that employee deserves my time, my attention, my preparation. And so I'm going to try and lay out as best I can the conversation, let them know of the realities that we're dealing with, why the decision was made, how I arrived at that decision. Let them know that if any of these layoffs are taking place, I personally made that decision. I'm not going to put that off on another manager. I had to make the decision, and here's how I made that decision. We also let them know what resources are available. We let them know what their compensation package is going to be, but also we have an employee assistance program, and we let them know how they can get in touch with the right people so that they can get counseling if they choose to do that. We let them know of any resources that we can bring to bear that would make this a little bit easier. And so how do you prepare? I rehearse it, as strange as that sounds.
Well, as Ray had just mentioned, I find number of times people making this comment, I wanted to be treated like a human being with respect and dignity, and somebody took the time to do that. There's no better paycheck than actually having that human-to-human compassionate contact. And even you're bearing a news which may not be very pleasant, but we never always get in our lives always pleasant news, do we?
Right.
And our lives are always challenging. So within the work environment, that's also going to occur anyways. But that wonders of connecting as human beings just takes away a lot of challenges and offers a healing.
Communication, communication, communication. You can't over-communicate. And what I've tried to do in my career is bring people in, show them behind the curtain. There should be no great mysteries about your business. Tell them when you're doing well, and tell them when the business is struggling. Tell them if you're in a down cycle, explain how a down cycle works, what they might expect, how long it might last, what you hope for, what details you're putting into place to maybe lighten that burden. And I think as you explain things to people, when bad news does come, they're not shocked, they're not surprised, because you prepared them for it. What I find ridiculous about corporate America is often we hold these details back, then we spring something like layoffs on people, and we're shocked when they're met with a negative or angry reaction. Well, of course they were met with that. And even if you communicate, you're going to get some sort of resistance naturally, but it's going to be a lot more tempered, and people are going to understand. I've had conversations as I've let people go, as difficult as those conversations are, at the end of that conversation they've said, I just wanted to say thank you for the way you handled it. And that's when you know, okay, I think we did this the right way. I think it's being comfortable with who you are and the type of person. I don't think you can be one type of person at home and another person at work and another person in your faith. I think the same person needs to exist in all of those realms. And I think the person who's trying to play the corporate person or the person who's playing the family person, that's when the conflict and that turmoil begins. So I'm the same person at home that I am at work, that I am in my faith, and try to keep centered as best I can.
I have seen two major kinds. One is which are very kind, and they will talk, they will communicate, and others which will send out an email midnight for a broadcast in the morning, or send a message or registered letters and so forth. And those are very poor way of communication. And I have also heard of how people can at times say there's a Friday and the Friday the day of layoff, and that's really the bad way of effectively working with wonderful human beings.
Our field is a very interesting one, because unlike we heard Ray talking about, a hospital obviously needs to be staffed at a level where we can provide the services for some of our society's most vulnerable individuals, those that have a serious mental illness. In our case, the cutbacks may be that there's a slowing of budgetary allocations, although the needs clearly are being met because we're a Commonwealth-funded hospital. What I find more is that people have other family stressors that they bring to work. They may have a job, a very good job, but they may be having a spouse or family obligations that just really are struggling because of the economy today. And so it's really important to be able to support our staff members at a time whenever they may be bringing situations from home to work. And as Safdar said, we work with human beings. They're people. And we can't turn it off at the door. I can't necessarily do a brilliant job of leaving everything from work whenever I go home to assume my other roles. And it's also the same with our staff, and so we need to be supporting them as individuals. One of the factors that we already heard about is make sure you communicate, and probably more importantly is for us to allow ourselves to be vulnerable and be seen as the human being. We're not just someone sitting behind a desk. It's really important for us to show our vulnerabilities and also to get to know the people that we have working with us as human beings themselves. I find it's really important to know who has children whenever you can. With 600 employees, sometimes that can be challenging, but it's really important to acknowledge who the people are beyond what their role at the hospital is, so that you can share that element with them too and help them whenever things are difficult.
Recognizing what's important. Be responsive and not reactive. Often when we have a news which is unpleasant, we can become very reactive to that. We just need to take a little pause and be able to respond to that. And as Ray was saying, just rehearse that a little bit and then become human being again. So with similarities, as we recognize what's important at our workplaces and how to generate that loyalty and in a sense of connectedness, those are very profound ways to a job with wonder and beauty.
The computer may be a really important tool for us, but that is not the heart of what we do. And clearly in our field, which is mental health, supporting individuals with serious mental illness, if we can't treat each other with respect and humanity that each of us wishes to have in every day of our life, we may not be functioning as well as ourselves as we would like to be either. It may be that stress that's working through to where you're not be really seeing the person behind whomever that role is, but rather treating them as if they were a computer. There's a little hint there that maybe you need to be working on something yourself as well.
I have known Edna for quite some time, and she is someone who's very human. And when we say retreat, it does not really necessarily mean that we have to go for a fancy place somewhere. A retreat can be even taking a pause from the runs of life, or taking that moment to reflect. Retreat really is to be able to find that inner strength and wisdom, and then be able to share that with others.
Knowing who you are as a person, Ray talked about that, having something that is meaningful to you beyond the role of a CEO or a manager, having some sort of faith if that's what's important to you as it is with me, and being able to do something that's more important than just generally what you do every day at the workplace. Celebrate those other roles that we all have as human beings.